You know that moment when you think you're doing the right thing, protecting someone you love, and suddenly you realize that everything you thought you knew was completely wrong? That's exactly what happened to me at my sister's wedding. And look, I've no idea whether I did right or wrong, but I know one thing. After that day, nothing was ever the same again. My name is James. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a financial analyst in London. My younger sister Charlotte has always been the pride of the family. You know, that sort of person everyone adores? Who's beautiful, intelligent, charismatic, and seems to have been born with the manual for living the perfect life? Well, that was Charlotte. She was 26 when she met Edward, a 37-year-old man who worked as a senior consultant at a management firm. Right from the start, everyone loved him. My parents were delighted. My aunts couldn't stop singing his praises, and even I, who've always been rather suspicious of my sister's boyfriends, thought she'd finally found someone worthy of her. Edward was one of those chaps who looks like he's stepped straight out of a Burberry advert. Always impeccably dressed, well-mannered, said the right things at the right time. He brought flowers for my mother when he came round for Sunday roast, chatted about football and Arsenal with my father, asked me about my work with genuine interest. He was too perfect, you understand? But I swallowed my doubts because I saw my sister happy. And after about 2.5 years together, he proposed to her during a trip they took to the Cotswolds. It was terribly romantic, with a hidden photographer and everything. Charlotte came back absolutely glowing, showing everyone the ring, and soon the preparations for the big day began. The months that followed were complete madness. My mother practically moved in with Charlotte to help with the preparations. There were meetings with wedding planners, dress fittings, cake tastings, flower selections. I participated where I could, but I confess that World of Weddings isn't really my cup of tea. Even so, I saw my sister so enthusiastic that I couldn't help but be swept along. She had that sparkle in her eyes, you know, that happiness that overflows. And Edward seemed equally enthusiastic. They were the perfect couple. The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday in September at Kensington Palace Gardens. The weather was beginning to cool after the warm summer we'd had. Autumn was arriving, and the palace gardens were magnificent with a romantic and perfect atmosphere. The ceremony was to take place outdoors, followed by a reception in one of the palace's elegant halls. Everything was set to be the wedding of the year. But then, 6 weeks before the big day, something happened that changed everything. It was a Thursday evening and I'd gone out with some mates to a pub in Shoreditch. We were there, drinking pints, talking about work and football, when one of my friends, Oliver, who works at the same firm as Edward, arrived rather late. He greeted everyone, ordered a pint, and sat down next to me. I noticed he was a bit odd, rather agitated, but I thought it was just exhaustion from work. After about 25 minutes, he called me to go to the gents. I found it strange, but went along. When we entered the toilet, he checked there was nobody in the stalls and looked at me with a serious expression I'd never seen on him before. My heart started racing. I knew something dreadful was coming. "James, mate, I need to tell you something, but you can't say it was me who told you, right? It's about Edward." He paused, as if gathering courage. "Last Tuesday, I saw him in a restaurant in Mayfair. He was with a woman. And mate, it wasn't a business meeting. No. They were dining, drinking wine, laughing, and at one point he held her hand and kissed her. It wasn't a friendly kiss, understand? It was a kiss from someone who's involved. I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. I stood there frozen, staring at Oliver without being able to process what he'd just told me. Edward? Perfect Edward? Betraying my sister 6 weeks before the wedding? It couldn't be true. Are you absolutely certain, Oliver? Are you sure it was him? My voice came out trembling. 100%, James. I've worked with the bloke for 3 years. I know how to recognize him from afar. And look, I was in two minds whether to tell you or not, but mate, she's your sister. She deserves to know before marrying that tosser. I left the toilet still in shock. I returned to the table, but couldn't pay attention to the conversation anymore. My head was spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. What should I do? Tell Charlotte and risk destroying her happiness? What if it was a misunderstanding? What if Oliver had seen wrong? But at the same time, if it were true and I didn't say anything, my sister was going to marry a cheater. I spent the entire night awake, tossing and turning in bed, thinking about all the possibilities. In the morning, I decided I needed to be certain before doing anything. I rang Oliver and asked for more details. Which restaurant? What time? What did the woman look like? He gave me all the information he remembered. It was a posh French restaurant in Mayfair, around 8 o'clock in the evening, and the woman was blonde, elegant, must have been about 32. I decided to investigate myself. In the following days, I began observing Edward more carefully. I checked his social media, paid attention to his schedule, and the following Tuesday, exactly 1 week after what Oliver had told me, I decided to follow Edward after work. I know it sounds mad, but I needed to know the truth. I parked near the building where he worked and waited. Around 7 in the evening, he came out. But instead of taking his car and going to Charlotte's flat, as he always did, he walked a few streets and entered a residential building. I noted the address. He stayed there for more than 2.5 hours. When he came out, he seemed in a rush, frequently checking his mobile. My stomach was churning. This wasn't normal. The next day, I returned to that building and spoke with the porter, making up some excuse about looking for a friend. I discovered that, in the flat Edward had visited, lived a certain Sophie Mitchell. I searched the name on social media, and bingo. It was the woman Oliver had described. Blonde, elegant, and from the photos, she seemed to have exactly the profile Oliver had mentioned. But what shocked me most was that trawling through her old photos, I found several in which Edward appeared. Photos from more than 20 months ago. Them in restaurants, on trips, embracing, happy. My God, this wasn't a one-night affair. It was a parallel relationship. The bloke had been with my sister and with this Sophie at the same time for more than 20 months. I felt a rage I'd never felt in my life. That bastard had been cheating on my sister all this time. And the worst part, he was about to marry her, probably to keep up appearances or out of self-interest whilst keeping another woman hidden. Now I was certain. There was no escape. I had to tell Charlotte. But how? How do you destroy the happiness of someone you love? How do you say that the love of their life is a lie? I tried several times in the following days. I'd ring Charlotte to talk, but always lost courage at the last moment. She was so happy, so excited about the wedding that was to take place in less than 4 weeks. Seeing that happiness and knowing I was going to destroy it was unbearable. I then decided I needed more concrete evidence. I hired a private investigator, spent money I didn't have, but I needed photographic proof. The investigator worked quickly. In 5 days, he delivered a complete dossier to me. Photos of Edward entering and leaving Sophie's flat, photos of the two of them together in restaurants, even photos of conversations the investigator had managed to capture where Edward clearly demonstrated romantic involvement with her. With the evidence in hand, I arranged to meet Charlotte at a cafe near her place. It was a Monday afternoon, exactly 12 days before the wedding. She arrived smiling, hugged me, ordered a flat white, and began talking enthusiastically about the final adjustments to the wedding. "Charlotte, I need to tell you something very serious," I interrupted. My voice was shaking, and I know she noticed. Her smile vanished. "What is it, James? You're frightening me." I pulled out the envelope with the photos and placed it on the table, but didn't open it yet. I looked into her eyes, took a deep breath. "It's about Edward." I saw her body stiffen. She looked at the envelope and then at me. "What about Edward? He's cheating on you, Charlotte. For more than 20 months. He's got another woman. And I've got proof." The silence that followed was deafening. She remained there, motionless, looking at me as if I'd spoken in another language. Then, slowly, she took the envelope and opened it. I watched her eyes pass over the photos, one by one. Her expression didn't change. She didn't cry, didn't scream, had no dramatic reaction. She simply looked at the photos in silence. After a few minutes that seemed like hours, she closed the envelope, put it back on the table, and looked at me. Her expression was impossible to decipher. "I know," she simply said. "What do you mean you know?" My voice came out louder than I'd intended. A few people in the cafe looked in our direction. "I've known for 11 months, James." She spoke with a frightening calm. "I discovered it by chance, saw messages on his phone. I confronted him and he confessed everything. He said Sophie was a mistake from the past he was trying to end, but that it was complicated because she was emotionally fragile." I was speechless. "But Charlotte, if you've known for 11 months, why are you still marrying him? Why didn't you end it?" "Because I love him, James. And he loves me. Everyone makes mistakes. He promised he'd end it with her before the wedding, and I believe him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But these photos are from last week, Charlotte. He's still with her. He hasn't ended anything. He's still cheating on you. You don't understand, James. Relationships are complicated. I chose to forgive him and give us a chance. And I'm asking you to respect my decision. Respect? Charlotte, this bloke is making a fool of you. He's keeping both of you. And you're going to marry him knowing this? She stood up, took her handbag. Thank you for the concern, brother. But I know what I'm doing. And please, don't say anything to anyone. Not to our parents, not to anyone. This is between me and Edward. And she left, leaving me there alone, completely gobsmacked. How could she know? How could she marry him anyway? Had my sister gone mad? The following days were torture. I couldn't accept it. I thought about telling my parents, but Charlotte had asked me not to say anything. I thought about confronting Edward directly, but what would be the point? He already knew that I knew, and probably Charlotte had told him about our meeting. The only person I could confide in was my girlfriend, Emma. She was as shocked as I was. She tried to convince me that I shouldn't interfere, that it was Charlotte's life, but I simply couldn't accept and move on. It was consuming me. And then the wedding day arrived. Saturday dawned beautiful, with brilliant sunshine and a gentle breeze. Kensington Palace Gardens was impeccable, decorated with white roses and gold details. Guests began arriving around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd been there since early morning, helping with the final preparations, but could barely pretend enthusiasm. I saw my sister for the first time that day, when she was getting ready in one of the palace suites. She looked absolutely stunning in her wedding dress. My mother was crying with emotion. The bridesmaids were taking photos non-stop. Charlotte saw me and smiled, but it was the strangest smile. It wasn't that genuine and radiant smile I knew. There was something forced, rehearsed about it. James, can you come here for a moment? She called me. I went to her. She asked to be left alone. When everyone had gone out, she looked at me seriously. I know you're worried about me, and I'm grateful for that. But today is my day, James, and I need you to promise me you won't do anything, that you won't ruin my wedding. Charlotte, you've still got time. You don't have to do this. You deserve someone who respects you, who truly loves you. I love him, James, and he loves me. I know you don't understand, but it's my choice. Please, promise me. I looked at her, my baby sister whom I'd always protected, and I couldn't make that promise. I couldn't. Because deep inside me, something was saying I couldn't let this happen. The ceremony began at 5 o'clock. All the guests were seated on the white chairs decorated with gold ribbons. The music began to play, and the bridesmaids and groomsmen started to enter. I was one of the groomsmen, so I entered with one of Charlotte's friends. My heart was pounding. My hands were sweating. When it was Charlotte's turn to enter, everyone stood up. She was on my father's arm, walking down the flower-lined aisle. She looked beautiful, but I could see in her eyes that strange thing, that false brightness. And I saw Edward there at the front, smiling, but it wasn't a smile of true love. It was a smile from someone playing a part. The ceremony proceeded normally. The officiant spoke about love, commitment, respect. Every word was like a knife in my chest because I knew all of this was a lie. And then came the moment for the vows. Edward was first. Charlotte, I met you nearly 3 years ago, and from the first day, I knew you were special. You're the most incredible woman I've ever met. You're beautiful, intelligent, funny, caring. You make me want to be a better person every day. And I promise to love you, respect you, honor you for all the days of my life. I promise to be faithful, to be present, to be your partner in all moments. You are my love, my best friend, my soulmate. Many people were crying. My mother was wiping away tears. But I felt sick, because every word coming out of his mouth was a lie. He wasn't going to be faithful. He wasn't faithful. And then it was Charlotte's turn. She looked at Edward, took a deep breath, and began her vows. Edward, when I met you, I thought I'd found the love of my life. You seemed perfect, but over time, I discovered that nobody is perfect. I discovered that relationships require truth, require honesty. I discovered things about you that hurt me deeply. The atmosphere changed instantly. People began looking at each other, confused. Edward went pale. I felt my heart racing. But before I continue, she turned and looked at me. James, my brother, Could you please come here? I was paralyzed. All eyes turned to me. What was she doing? Slowly, I stood up and went to her. Charlotte held my hand and then looked at all the guests. My brother recently discovered that my fiancé has been having an affair with another woman for more than 20 months. He came to tell me, tried to protect me, and I already knew. I've known for months. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. Edward was white as a sheet, in shock. My mother had her hand over her mouth, also in shock. And do you know why I continued with the wedding preparations knowing this? Because I needed this moment. I needed everyone to know who you really are, Edward. I needed my parents, my friends, your family, everyone to see the truth. She turned to Edward. You're a liar. You betrayed me, humiliated me, and still had the nerve to stand here in front of me, making false vows of fidelity and love. But the game is over. She removed the engagement ring and threw it on the ground. There won't be a wedding, but at least now everyone knows who you really are. And then she looked at me, smiled, and said very quietly, but I heard it clearly. Now everyone knows. That's what matters. What happened next was chaos. Edward's family stood up, outraged. His mother started shouting at Charlotte, calling her mad, ridiculous. My father went to Edward and said if he didn't leave immediately, he'd throw him out himself. My mother ran to Charlotte, embracing her, who finally began to cry. Tears of relief, of liberation. The guests didn't know what to do. Some began to leave. Others stayed, trying to understand what had happened. I stood there still holding my sister's hand, trying to process everything. Edward tried to approach Charlotte, tried to say something, but my father placed himself between them. You've done enough harm to my daughter. Now leave here and don't come back. Edward left, accompanied by his family, all ashamed and furious. The palace that moments before had been a setting for romance and happiness now seemed like a battlefield. When the dust finally settled and most of the guests had left, Charlotte, my parents, and a few close friends remained at the palace. The organizers didn't know what to do with all the food and drink that had been prepared. Someone suggested we at least eat, since everything was paid for. And so what should have been a wedding reception became a sort of liberation party. Charlotte changed out of her wedding dress into a simple dress she'd brought, and we all sat at the tables, ate, drank, and talked. But I needed answers. I needed to understand. I sat next to Charlotte, away from the others. Why didn't you tell me the truth when I came to tell you about the affair? Why did you let me think you were being stupid, that you were accepting being cheated on? She sighed, looking at the horizon where the sun was beginning to set. Because I needed to do it my way, James. When I discovered the affair 11 months ago, I was devastated. I cried for days, thought about ending it immediately. But then I started planning. I realized that simply ending it wouldn't be enough. He'd invent an excuse. He'd make everyone think I was mad or overreacting. His family would be on his side. Even our mutual friends would question it. She looked at me. I needed everyone to know the truth. I needed to expose him publicly, in front of everyone who matters. And the wedding was the perfect opportunity. So I played his game. I pretended everything was fine. I pretended to believe his promises about ending it with the other woman. I invested in the wedding. I let him think he'd completely fooled me. But you suffered for all those months, Charlotte. You pretended to be happy whilst dying inside. It was difficult, yes, but it was worth it. Did you see his face? The shame? He'll never be able to wear that mask of the perfect man again. And I finally freed myself, not just from him, but from everything that relationship represented. And Sophie? Did you contact her? I didn't need to. I sent her a copy of the photos you gave me a few days ago, along with a note explaining I knew everything and she could keep him. I doubt she wants him. Now he hasn't got both of us. It was just a matter of ego for him, you know? Having a perfect fiancé and a mistress. Now he's got nobody. I was impressed by the coldness, the planning, the calculated revenge of my sister. This wasn't the Charlotte I knew, or perhaps it was a Charlotte I'd never seen before. Are you all right? I asked, genuinely concerned. She smiled, and this time it was a genuine smile. Yes, James. For the first time in months, I'm truly all right. I'm free. We spent the rest of the evening there, at the palace. We transformed what could have been a tragedy into a strange celebration of a new beginning. Someone put on music, we danced, laughed, and Charlotte was glowing in a way I hadn't seen for a long time. The days that followed were intense. The story spread quickly. Social media exploded with comments, some praising Charlotte's courage, others criticizing the way she'd handled the situation. There were those who called her a hero, and there were those who called her vindictive and manipulative. Edward tried to give his version of events, posted on social media a lengthy text in which he claimed to be the victim of a conspiracy, in which he alleged Charlotte had invented everything out of pathological jealousy. But the evidence was irrefutable. The photos the investigator had taken began to circulate and completely disproved his version. Sophie also spoke out a few days later. She posted a text saying she'd been deceived by Edward as much as Charlotte had, that he'd told her the wedding was just a formality, that the relationship with Charlotte had been over for ages, but he was maintaining appearances due to family pressure. She publicly apologized to Charlotte and said she was also ending the relationship with Edward. Edward lost his job. The firm where he worked, concerned about their image after the scandal, decided to dismiss him. He lost many friends, and the worst thing for him was being publicly exposed as a liar and cheater. As for Charlotte, she went through a grieving process, because even though the relationship was a lie, she'd invested 3 years of her life in it. She dreamed of a future by his side, and processing all of that wasn't easy. She started therapy, which helped tremendously, and slowly, she began to rebuild herself. A few weeks after the wedding that didn't happen, Charlotte came to visit me at my flat. She brought fish and chips and wine, and we talked late into the night. You know, James, I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, and I realized something. When you came to tell me about the affair, I was angry with you. Angry because you were destabilizing my plan. I'd already decided how I was going to handle it, and you were trying to force me to handle it differently. I didn't know anything about your plan, Charlotte. I just wanted to protect you. I know. And that's why in the end, I called you to the altar. Because I realized you deserved to be part of that moment. You were the only one who had the courage to confront me, to risk our relationship to tell me the truth. That's true love. And I wanted you to know I appreciated it. I still think you could have handled it differently. Less publicly, less dramatically. She laughed. Perhaps, but it wouldn't have had the same effect. And look, I don't regret anything. For the first time in my life, I did something totally for myself, in my own way, without worrying about what others would think. It was liberating. A few months passed. Charlotte started going out again, having fun, being herself. She met new people, made new friends. And although she still had difficult days, she was clearly on a path of healing. As for me, this experience changed me too. It made me question many things about relationships, about truth, about how far we should go to protect those we love. And it made me realize that sometimes the person we think needs protection is stronger than we imagine. 1 year after that day, Charlotte organized a party. She called it 1 Year of Freedom Party. She invited close friends, family, and a few people who'd supported her during that difficult period. It was at the same Kensington Palace Gardens where the wedding should have been. She insisted on redefining that place. During the party, she made a toast. I want to thank everyone who's here today. A year ago, I went through the most difficult and most liberating situation of my life, and you were with me, especially my brother James, who, even when I was difficult with him, never gave up protecting me. And today, I want to toast not to what I lost, but to what I gained, my dignity, my freedom, and the certainty that I can trust my own judgment. It was an emotional moment, and looking at her there, radiant, strong, free, I realized that perhaps everything had been worth it. Perhaps she really did need to go through it in that specific way to become who she is today. Of course, not everyone agreed with the way she'd handled the situation. There are still people today who think she went too far, that she was cruel, that she could have simply ended it and moved on. But I, who know my sister better than anyone else, understand that she needed to do it her way. And in the end, who am I to judge? What I learned from all of this is that sometimes the people we love surprise us. Sometimes they're stronger, cleverer, more resilient than we ever imagined. And sometimes trying to protect them can actually mean underestimating them. Today, when I look back, I still don't know if I did the right thing investigating Edward, telling Charlotte, not respecting it when she asked me not to do anything. But I know one thing. I did what I thought was right at the time, with the information I had. And in the end, in a way I never would have imagined, everything worked out. Charlotte is well, she's happy, she's free. And I learned that love doesn't always mean protecting. Sometimes it means trusting. Trusting that the person you love knows what they're doing, even when you don't understand, even when it seems like madness. And as for Edward, well, they say he moved to another city, tried to restart his life far from the scandal. I don't know if he succeeded. I don't know if he regrets it. I don't know if he learned anything. And frankly, I don't care. He made his choices and now must live with the consequences. What matters is that my sister, that person I always protected, who I always thought needed my protection, showed me she's much stronger than I ever imagined. And that, in a way, also freed me from the need to always be the protective brother, the hero of the story. Because sometimes the hero is the very person you're trying to save. And if there's one lesson I take from this entire story, it's this: never underestimate the strength of those you love, because you might be surprised. And you might discover that, in the end, they didn't need to be saved. They just needed you to be there, by their side, when they decided to save themselves. And now I'm asking you, dear viewers, have you ever experienced a situation where someone you wanted to protect turned out to be much stronger than you thought? Or have you yourself taken a radical step to reclaim your dignity? Write your opinion in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think about Charlotte's decision. Was she brave or did she go too far? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the emotional stories I share here. Your support means the world to me. See you in the next video.